know what legacy means?
It's what you pass down to your children and your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone.
Welcome back to the Legacy of Westeros, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, House of the Dragon Season 2 is here, and it came in with an absolute bang. We waited, if my math is doing me wonders or working for me at the moment, I think House of the Dragon Season 1 stopped airing in October of 2022, and so you had that wait from that point right up until yesterday, last night. It came back, another Game of Thrones property back on the air, and here we are tonight. Big thank you to everybody coming out. This is our first ever live stream on the Legacy of Westeros, so I imagine the numbers will not be great to start. But for those of you that are coming back, thank you. It's appreciated. Be sure to share your thoughts about what you thought of the episode. They can be as spoiler-filled as you want down in either the live chat or the comment section down below. Right off the top, big thank you to our channel sponsors. They sponsor all of our channels. Without them, we wouldn't be here. One of the sponsors is actually on air with us tonight, so that's nice. We got Jesse, Storytime Spectacular, Jason from Backtrack Cinema, Ryan from Colleague Nation, and Matt and Chris. Without you guys, honestly, the content that we do would not be possible. And a big thank you to our patrons as well. Without you guys, the content would not be possible as well. Joining me, as always, on a lot of the projects that we do. First up, he's my co-host on the Legacy of Star Wars. Randy, what's going on? How you feeling coming off that, I would call it emotional roller coaster of an episode?
That's like quite the understatement when you put it that way. But no, I was invested. I'm like, wait, the hour's up? No, that's not fair. I want more. So obviously it did exactly what it was set to do, set the tone to some degree, because I know we're going to get a lot more next week. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked. I was blown away by some of the stuff. A lot of the cinematography was amazing. So, but yeah, I can't wait to get into it.
Also joining me, he is my co-host over at Colleague Nation. We're both suckers for punishment, which is why we cheer for the same terrible NASCAR team. Ryan, how's it going, buddy? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Yeah, thanks for bringing me on board to do some of this Westeros. I really love the show, and let me tell you, just it's been almost 2 years since we had a new episode, and I kind of forgot what I was getting myself into, and I was prepared but not prepared at the same token, and let me tell you, they didn't disappoint. The show is fantastic, so I am very eager and very excited to dive into this.
Also joining us tonight, you might have seen her last night on Fandom Empire with our immediate reaction review with our buddy Zach. She's my partner in crime, my partner in life, and probably too soon to make this joke, but probably the death of me. Jade, what's going on? How are you?
Too soon. too soon. I think that even 10 years it will be too soon. I'm doing okay. I think that I was the complete opposite of all of you. I was not hyped for the episode going into it. I was more hyped for season 1, and then just like with everything happening in life, I forgot that it was coming out this weekend. And so then when we actually got to sit down and watch it, I'm just like, okay, awesome, now I'm ready, let's do this.
So let's start there. It's a good segue. Obviously, House of the Dragon comes on the heels of one of the most successful TV shows ever to air, Game of Thrones. It's a spin-off set 170 so years before the beginning of Game of Thrones. Actually, 170 so years, I believe, before Daenerys' birth. Maybe it's 190. I don't know. It's close to 200 years before. And yet serves as a pretty direct prequel to that Game of Thrones series. We're going to go around the table clockwise here and share our brief thoughts on what we thought of House of the Dragon Season 1 before getting into all the glory and horror of House of the Dragon Season 2. Randy, take it away.
So for season one, I was excited because it was just more Game of Thrones content. And the thing that really surprised, not wouldn't say surprised me, but I was very happy with was the fact that it felt like Game of Thrones. The cinematography was there, the music, everything that you would feel in in a season of Game of Thrones. This is what you got, and you could tell they took their time and really cared about the source material that they were pulling from. And it was a great story. They handled the time jumps very well. And I really started getting attached to these characters by season's end. It really was just uh, we're just knocked out of the park right off the bat, and I'm really excited to see where things go from here.
Um, so for season one, I was like I said, I was more hyped for it because it was more Game of Thrones content. Sean and I had just finished a watch through of Game of Thrones, so it was fresh in our mind. It was exciting. It was new. It was something that we could do together, and it was just everything that I wanted. I mean, it starts off with gut wrenching having to see what happens in episode one of season one, and then it just escalates from there. It doesn't have a dull moments. So I'm kind of hoping that that's the same with season two. Just from what we've seen so far, I would say that that's pretty on par.
Yeah, and kind of touching on what Randy said, my love of Game of Thrones, obviously the story was exceptionally compelling, but the cinematography, the directing, the storytelling, the writing until the end, is what really separated Game of Thrones from any other show on television. And just getting right back into that with House of Dragon, just right out of the gate, episode one. I mean, just sucked us right back in, right? It just was everything we loved about Game of Thrones, and they brought it back. And now that with the source material that they had a strong direction with the story. And again, even though they had a lot of prologue to cover, they did it very concisely, and they did it in a way that kept me fully engaged. Obviously a lot of that was just through the story was focused on King's Landing. And that was great. I loved that, but I'm definitely excited going into season two as we start to venture out a little bit back into the world of Westeros and really start expanding our palette. That's something I'm super excited about going forward.
There's so many shows that get spin-offs now, and there's so many examples of it. Sons of Anarchy with Mayan, Breaking Bad with Better Call Saul, The Walking Dead had 10,000 of them, Arrowverse, etc. So a lot of the times, I hate to say it, a spin-off ends up being sort of a watered-down version of what came before, and you're just trying to hold on, and usually it's diminishing returns. House of the Dragon season one was not that. You had a breather between the divisive season 8 of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. And then we also covered about the span of 30 years in 10 episodes. So I do think that even though there's only 8 episodes in this series, a lot of them over an hour long, I think you're still going to have slower periods in this season than what you had in last season. But I thought last season did a fantastic job at introducing the family dynamics and really setting up the chessboard, if you will, in terms of what's to come in this season. So it's a show that I fell in love with, and with a kind of a whole new story. The one thing that wasn't new is the cinematic presentation, the production levels. Those things can't be questioned. And a little later on in the show, I think Ryan is going to have a bit of a hot take for people about that big moment that was mentioned in the chat by our buddy Tommy. And then I'm going to have a no-brainer take, which is probably going to piss off some Star Wars fans, but we're going to go there. And I talked about it at length with Zach, who can't be here tonight. But let's dive into it. Season 2, House of the Dragon. We're already an eighth of the way through the season, pardon me. Let's go with our brief non-spoiler thoughts on the episode. Randy, did it live up to your expectations? Was it about there? Did it surpass them? Make no mistake, the one thing that stood out to me is this show will always find a way to get people to talk, whether it's something really positive or something very divisive.
I think it met my expectations. Obviously, with the way season 1 went, having that brief, I wouldn't say brief, but 2-year window of waiting for this. Obviously, the hype is real, and I felt like, what I didn't realize they were going to do that really was a nice surprise was pick right up where everything left off. That way, for those who binge watched season 1 leading up to this, it was just like a straight continuation, which really I probably should have done, but I digress. It was a good episode. Lots of highs and lows in terms of just like you said, the roller coaster of emotions. But it was all good. It was done so well. And just again, coming back to like cinematography, and some of the shots were just absolutely amazing. I was just, taken aback by just how gorgeous some of this was. And it makes me realize how much we kind of need this and moving forward in a lot of the Star Wars content we're putting out there, because one of the things you always harp on is cinematography and production value, and it definitely was here. The story, obviously, heartbreak, vengeance, the little things that we were going to get, different little character developments, like with Damon, and which bar none my favorite character. And then, of course, Allison, we get to see growth from her. It's like there was a lot to unpack in this episode, and it's kind of hard to not spoil anything in like a little not brief, non-spoilery thing here. So I think I'm just going to leave it at, it was a great episode. I can't wait to actually get to the spoilery stuff, because that's really where the meat and potatoes is for me.
I could not agree with you more. I just like cinematically, it was beautiful. Like it's not a spoiler. The opening scene alone was breathtaking to see everything that happened there, right? And I think that it was really good that they didn't of course they did a little 5-second recap, whatever, however long that was, but they didn't have to sit there and go over storylines by the characters explaining the same shit over and over. Am I allowed to swear? Over and over again. Like that's the biggest pet peeve I have with any show that we watch is them being like, last time on this show, and then like the recap, and then the characters doing the recap as well. Why? Why? I hate that. So to get right into it, it was fantastic, and then to have like you said, there's growth, there's excitement. I don't think there was one dull moment where I'm just like, oh, can this just like hurry up and end? Except for maybe one thing, but like it was 5 seconds long, so I didn't really care.
Yeah, just to finish off the roundtable of saying, agreeing on the same topic, the cinematography, again, and again, this is what separates House of Dragon, Game of Thrones from every other television show, is just their attention to detail. And something, Sean, you shared with us earlier today, the kind of behind the scenes, what they were able to do this season in building their sets, a lot less CGI. Obviously, there's CGI where there needed to be, but what you saw was truly intricately designed, built sets. And it really just makes a difference. And visually, from start to finish, it was spectacular. So, again, they really set a high bar, which I know they will continue to exceed episode after episode. But getting into the episode, I guess I was a little surprised about, they didn't just jump right into battle. They still continued to pace themselves, even though there's only 8 episodes this season. I was expecting them to kind of jump right into certain action-packed scenes, and they didn't. They continued to build the storyline. They picked up where they left off. They continued to grow, everybody's, especially considering how last season ended, how that affected each individual person, and it really allowed us to get a grasp of each character and where they were emotionally, and how we were going to kind of maybe see that play out in the coming bits of the episode and into future episodes. So once again, they really set the bar, and now we have a very strong base, and we're ready to ramp up going into the next few episodes. So I'm really excited about that.
I can't agree more with Jade. I won't say that often, though. It'll go to her head. But like, there's nothing worse than having the last time on whatever, and then the characters then spend 10 or 15 minutes recapping it. And, we talked about it on last night's episode. But like one of the examples that we spoke about very briefly here was that they could have showed us Eamon getting in shit from Alicent, and we could have spent 10 minutes of them all finding out what happened. You didn't need to, because the way they handled the council meeting, you already knew he got in shit. She doesn't even want him there. Period. End of story. And I just thought they handled it well. They don't insult the intelligence of their audience, and I appreciate that. On the production level, strongly recommend. I don't know if all these are going to go on YouTube or not, but right now available for free on YouTube is The House That Dragons Built. Now, maybe you don't like. For my little rant that I'm going to start the show with here, and I won't carry it on too long. You might not see my point unless you watch this, or if you go back and watch any of the ones from season 1. But if you're a fan of the properties that Lucasfilm, that Disney specifically, but Lucasfilm, Marvel, and the production quality that you're getting out of most of those shows, maybe except for what was it, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, whatever it ended up being called, that and Andor, you can take every one of those other shows. And we run a channel where we've talked about a lot of those other shows. And you put them up against the cinematic presentation, the attention to detail, the production quality, the cinematography, not insulting your audience's intelligence. Not only does it not hold a fucking candlestick to what Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, whatever you're referring to it, does. We're not talking about like if I used a sports metaphor, you're not talking about like the New York Yankees compared to the Toronto Blue Jays. No, it's not that. It's like the New York Yankees compared to your kid's local softball team. It's that big of a difference. And it's honestly insulting. Like I said to Jade last night, I said, I really like Star Wars The Acolyte and the story that it's telling. I'm not going to bash it for that. But holy fuck, these other shows that are committing highway robbery with the production that they're doing. Now, not every show is going to be Game of Thrones, but specifically when we're talking about Star Wars and Marvel properties that are supposed to be this big scale, grand scope things, specifically in George Lucas's case, that is what he meant Star Wars to be. Not that you can't have smaller storytelling. You can. And yet this little show that could be based off of novels that George R. R. Martin did, a bunch of them sitting right in front of me, it's not close. And it's a catch-22. As a Thrones and House of the Dragon fan, it's like, fuck, this is awesome. But I'm not going to sit here and lie about it and say that it doesn't hurt my interest in those other properties. Ryan, you said you watched that the house that Dragons built. Like, that sewer sequence? Or how about the set production for King's Landing? You're not talking about two little sets that, are being conceived to be the Jedi Temple inside for Star Wars. No, you're talking about they built a fucking castle for real, legitimately. That is what those other properties who have just as much, if not more money, should be doing. They don't match Thrones or House of the Dragon on a production level, and they sure as fuck don't match them on a marketing level, as we've seen over the last month. And I plead with whoever's going to listen to this, do yourself a favor and watch the behind-the-scenes stuff or go back and check out the marketing. You are being utterly robbed by these other big properties. And one day, I firmly believe they will get their shit together, but that day is not yet, and it's not with the shows that they're doing. So I'm pleased to have lived long enough to experience this. Randy, I'm going to toss it over to you briefly here, just because you did the Star Wars show with me. I urge you to check out the behind the scenes thing, and specifically the sewer sequence, which I think is the last 5 minutes of it. And this is what we need from as many entertainment properties that can afford it, because it's immersive storytelling, and there's a difference between believing something could actually be there and not. Did you feel that the production quality of this episode lived up to what Game of Thrones was doing in their back half, really, because their first half was not the same? And, being honest, comparing it to a lot of the Star Wars properties that we cover, do you feel like there's a massive difference? Maybe you don't, and that's fine.
No, I actually do agree that there's definitely a difference. Obviously, we got with Andor, that was definitely, high production value, very attention to detail. With what we got here with House of the Dragon, they really did, transport you there. Like, the setting itself was a character, and that's what you're supposed to feel when watching these types of shows, regardless if it's Marvel, if it's straight up Disney, if it's Star Wars, if it's DC, that you're supposed to feel transported to, that land, that setting, that space and time, rather than going, I bet you that's green screened, or I bet you that's someone in a mocap outfit sitting there just doing whatever. What we get here is just the costume design and the attention to detail, like right down to the little bit last bits of armor, and just the castle itself. It's absolutely amazing. It's on such a grand scale, and one of the things I've always appreciated about anything HBO does is, for the most part, all their series, in some way, shape, or form, they do take really good care of it. They really try very hard to make sure that when you're watching the show, you feel like you're there. And that's exactly what we got last night. Whether it's looking out over the ocean, or some of the views from the castle, the views from the wall. I mean, that was when we finally got to see a Stark. I was just like, oh, the nostalgia just from seeing the wall and just seeing that view again. It was just breathtaking to me. And I don't know, we need this in all facets of TV now. And here's the thing. Sometimes, yes, you're going to spend a lot of money on this sort of thing. But the thing is, if you know the right tricks, you don't have to go completely crazy with the budget. You can still put out high quality product, setting, design, everything for, decent costs. You don't have to worry about, breaking the bank a lot of the times. We've seen independent filmmakers and just content creators create something more immersive than what we've gotten in some of the previous Star Wars stuff that we've seen. It's crazy to think that we're at that point now where the technology is there, whether you're going out there for real, or even some of the stuff we've seen that is technically CG. We're seeing so much more out of that, and a lot of different properties that are just low budget stuff that we're actually seeing out of some of the high budget stuff, like we'll say Kenobi, for example, Obi-Wan Kenobi, for example. We know that the production costs were not all that great for that, and it showed, even though it was not a bad series by any shape of the imagination, but there was just too much there that was flawed, that kind of could take you out of the story. With House of the Dragon, nothing takes you out of the story. You're literally, this is one of those few shows I will set my phone down because I'm that immersed into the story. I'm that sucked into the story, not just from the characters, but from the setting and the design and just everything around it. They've taken such good care of giving you the right musical cues, the right lighting, the right setting, that sometimes you don't even have to even pay attention to some of the dialogue. Sometimes you can just enjoy what you're watching.
Yeah, and Sean, I'm very happy that you're playing this video, because it really does visually show the time and effort that they put into the back end production portion of this, and just to kind of piggyback on Randy, what we were saying, I truly do feel, even though I know darn well this is a fantasy show, completely and utterly nothing real about it, for those 50 minutes when I'm watching that show, I do truly feel like I am there, right? That I am fully part of that world, I'm part of that timeline, and that really just makes me feel engaged like I don't always feel. And you're right, I didn't look at my phone once and for 50 minutes, and that is something for a lot of us is not easy to do in this day and age. And just to the detail, right? Outside of the sets and what really helps set them apart is how much they care about each character and how much time they put into what each character might think or do with their space. One of the big areas was the living quarters, and I think we would touch on that. Some of those living quarters with the new change in regime who looked familiar, and they went in and said, okay, how is Aegon going to set his quarters? Even though he took Viserys' old room, he didn't touch it because Aegon doesn't care about the aesthetic. And then, but for Alicent's, she changed Rhaenyra's room, and those just small details and how they have changed, how they've set each room and each aesthetic to make us feel like we were walking into each character's personal living space, and how that would make us feel if we were there, is just next level. And truly, no other show on planet Earth has come close to touching that level of detail.
I personally can't wait to do our second watch through, because we just haven't had time to do that today. But I can't wait to do our second watch through after watching that 20-minute episode, because it said something along the lines of, like, in Helena's room, you can see her scribblings on the wall. And, like, I would love to see that, right? And like you said, it's even the detail of, does he change the furniture? No. And in Allison's room, they changed the furniture, but everything was kept in the same spots. It's like the little tiny details. It's better than what's that thing that they use in Star Wars where it was like the huge thing,
Stagecraft.
the stagecraft. It was a huge thing when it
you're
first came out, and like it was amazing to watch. But there's been a couple episodes where we've watched something and I'm just like, oh, that was done on the stagecraft. Like it just takes you out because you're just like, oh, that background looks crappy.
So one of the things they did this year, and you know what? I'm betting nobody noticed this in the first episode. The council room looks down on Dubrovnik. So they digitally insert Dubrovnik to give people an idea of the sets that they use. And we'll dive into the story here. We got Team Green coming up next, and it'll be full spoilers, so be aware of that. They built the whole inner part of the Red Keep. It's on a soundstage. It's multi-level. Everything you see them walk through is not like it's just a bunch of rooms side by side. No, it goes up. It's stacked, just like a castle. And then they built the outer part of the Red Keep. And now they've built a bunch of King's Landing streets. That's the type of production quality you should be seeing. And you used to see from Star Wars and still see in some Marvel movies. But stagecraft has really taken it away and made it feel 2D a lot of the times. And everything looks flat. And like people joke around with Kenobi and go, well, why the hell didn't Obi-Wan and Leia just go around the Red Gate there in the one episode? They can clearly just walk right around it. The limitations are so severe, and it's not even new stuff they're doing, and it's not like they're spending boatloads on sets. Believe me, if you just watch the little video we had up without audio, they're spending boatloads on sets. Make no mistake about it. When you're building whole towns, but back to that council room. In season 1, it's digitally inserted Dubrovnik. In season 2, they decided, you know what? Because we spent all this money on these sets, let's save some money and get rid of some of the CG. And they did what Lucasfilm did with The Empire Strikes Back. A lot of the Empire Strikes Back Hoth scenes are shot in front of this just beautiful painting done by this wonderful artist that I can't remember the name of. And guess what? That's what House of the Dragon Season 2 did. Anything you see outside of that council room it looks like Dubrovnik and it looks like the dragon pits right there. It's not. It's a really well done painting that they took a lot of time with. And if you watch that video and it's with the audio on, we can't play the audio, obviously. It gets into all that. And, I get it that things need to evolve and inventions happen, but sometimes some inventions aren't for the good. And, sometimes they need to be used right. So that's our somewhat long shtick on production quality. But hey, would anybody feel like House of the Dragon was paying Game of Thrones a proper tribute if they came out here and simply green screened everything and it didn't hold up to the production quality of Game of Thrones? Game of Thrones set a bar in its back half of its run, and if you don't match that, people are checking out. It's that simple, in my opinion. Anyways, let's move on. Team Green, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, let's start with the beginning of the episode for Team Green. In the first few events that I can think of involving Team Green would be we see Aegon landing on his dragon. They have the scorpion ready. They're ready to blast any fucking dragon out of the sky, which, gives you an idea how high alert they're on. And he comes in rather nonchalantly and just, he's very much the character we see at the end of season 1.
No remorse.
No, definitely no remorse. Doesn't care. He's the king now. He's looking for his son. Has no idea, obviously, what his son's day-to-day activities are, since he's where he normally is, according to Helena. And then we also had the introduction of Kristen Cole, who was having some dessert. But Randy, we'll go with you and go around the table. Thoughts on the introduction of Team Green? And we'll specifically stick to those 2 points in the council meeting, where Aegon's basically willing to let little Jaehaerys make a mockery of the young Lannister there. Your thoughts on how Team Green was introduced, some of the tension in that council meeting, maybe some of the worry about what kind of king they have on their hands. What was going through your mind? How did it come off to you? And then everybody else can follow up.
Well, I mean, with Aegon, I was just like, of course, you arrogant little shit, because that's exactly like how he makes me feel every time I see him, the way he acts. It's just like, I want to just grab him, smack him around a little bit and snap him out of it. We're not to the point of Joffrey issues, but I think as time goes on, we could get there with him. But other than that, I felt like you could tell he was young, immature, didn't care. He's like, I'm king. I can do whatever I want. I can treat people the way I want to, which is obviously the wrong thing to do. But that's what happens with power in general. I think it was, I will say I'll give him credit for wanting to actually, see his son and do something with his son. Granted, once I saw what happened with the council session, I was just like, seriously, that's what you're going to do with the kid? You're going to bring him in to be a distraction and just let him do whatever he wants? That's a great precedent to set for your kid. But again, he's the king. He's going to do whatever he wants. And I honestly, it was just, I wanted someone to smack him so bad. As far as what we saw with Alicent, I was like, I guess I can't blame her, all things considered. Lord only knows, for how long she just couldn't really do much of anything until the passing of the king, and it was, yeah. But with that whole council scene, it was interesting because you could tell there were some that were very tense, very ready to just be like, we've got to be ready with action. And Aegon's like, yeah, we'll just burn the blockade. I don't care. We'll just take my dragon and we'll go. I was just like, really? That's your answer? Just run the risk of losing your biggest weapon? Okay, that's smart. Obviously, Otto's definitely in his ear still, and he's going to be in everybody's ear. That dude annoys the hell out of me too. But overall, I felt like if you went and looked at everybody's expression, the way you could tell how they felt, how tense things were, how you could tell Alicent was struggling with something, like from the word go. You could tell that there was that her childhood friendship. She's still has feelings for Rhaenyra, and then you got everything going on with her son, trying to make sure he stays the course. Ultimately, though, it felt like just, I wouldn't say controlled chaos, but just chaotic, very chaotic. And I really after this episode, I guess we'll just see how much more chaotic it gets. But yeah, Aegon really needs to kind of step it up a little bit if he's going to be a king during this war, and hopefully, we'll actually get to see some growth with him, other than just being essentially a stupid kid with power.
My turn. Okay. So first of all, Allison can get fucked. Not just literally, but like get fucked. she slut shamed Rhaenyra for how long?
I think she did.
Yeah, but she slut shamed Rhaenyra for how long? And then she goes and fucks the same guy in the same room? Come on. Like, tell me you want to be her without telling me you want to be her, right? Second of all, can we just talk about the council scene where Allison says, like, oh, and my letters to Rhaenyra, has she responded? What, you want her to apologize for your son killing her son? You're expecting an apology? Bitch, like, pull your head out of your ass for 10 seconds and think about if it was you. Oh wait. I'm team black 100%, but so like she just irks me to no extreme. And then like Jaehaerys coming to the council meeting, like he's supposed to be like 4 years old, right? That's how old Sean and I's son is. It's 4 years old. There is not a fucking chance I would bring him to that, because like, yes, he listens and he behaves, but like 4-year-olds don't have the attention span to sit in something that serious. Like, and I get like like his father didn't bring him in to like the council stuff because Rhaenyra was supposed to be queen, so like he never thought to bring him into it. So now he wants to do that for his son, but at the same time, like, you didn't know your son's schedule. You didn't even know that your son wasn't there, because if you paid attention, like he walked up and checked the face, so you couldn't even tell the kids from the back of from the back. Come on. Like, what father doesn't know what their kids look like? One that's not involved. That's who. I don't know. I don't know. I'm done now.
Well, I think you guys have done a nice job of kind of covering most of my thoughts on a lot of this. But the one thing, just to really hammer home my feeling on the council scene in particular, is just the complete lack of accountability. There is no accountability for Aegon. He's been allowed to run ramp. And remember, when we ended season 1, he didn't particularly want the throne, right? Like, he was just kind of thrust into it, and it just shows in how he does not give a flying fuck about anything. He doesn't care the consequences of his actions, the consequences of Aemon's actions, or it just he's willing and ready to just throw it all out the window at a whim. He's so impulsive that he's just simply not made out for the job. He is not meant to be the king. It was thrust onto him when clearly he's not capable, doesn't seem to want to do it, and therefore he just doesn't give two shits. To your point about Jaehaerys, I understand that from Aegon's perspective, he was never given the opportunity to learn how to lead. That was Rhaenyra's position, and he was just kind of neglected, and he wanted to make sure that wasn't befallen onto his heir. But as you said, a 4-year-old, 6-year-old, however old he was just completely out of place, and he took a very serious meeting with very serious consequences. It kind of just took away from that, where nobody could be serious, and even I think, was it Jason Lannister? I think that's Jason. He's told to be a pony, right? Like, get on your. What is going on here? What are we doing? There's just simply nobody in control of that council chamber, And then even to Alicent's, I felt like, the Ravens, right? She went and talked to Orwell, the Grand Maester. He's like, has she sent any ravens? And his response was, no, we haven't received anything. We must assume this is a declaration of war, right? It's clear that they want to control everything, but they don't want to be responsible for any of the consequences. And frankly, that level of disorganization, especially at this point, is really showing for Team Green, in my opinion.
Jay, did you want to say something?
Yeah, but I forget what it was now. It's fine. Actually, no, I did want to say something. Can we also just touch upon that during that council scene, it dude with one eye. What's his name?
Aemond.
That's it. Yeah. He comes in and he's just like, no, this is the way that we should go about it. And he tries to take over the entire meeting, and Otto's just like, I think that was so funny.
They have
that goes to the no consequences, right? Aemond could just stroll in, and the only person that seemed to have been pissed at Aemond was Alicent. She seemed to be the only one that actually cared that what he did was a catalyst for destruction. Everybody else was like, yeah, all right, let's move on. How are we going to attack him next?
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. From Aegon's perspective, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt at first, because we haven't spent too much time with the character. This is a kid, if you go back to season 1's getting kicked by his grandfather, not Viserys, obviously. So he's got some trauma, obviously. He's also not the best human being, clearly, with what's happened in season 1. But I liked what Jade mentioned, how he never got brought to these council meetings because guess what? He was in the air. It was Rhaenyra. But then he lets him just fuck around, and it becomes a joke. And, if anything's really clear in that council meeting is you got a bunch of people just not on the same page. And this is a very, very dangerous time to not be on the same page, as we find out later in the episode. And also, your kid and your brother, your brother in terms of Aegon and Aemon, your kid in terms of Alicent and Aemon, has just killed royalty, murdered, whether it was on purpose or not. And you have the castle walls defended, but you feel so secure inside the Red Keep. And this is, we'll get to this discussion shortly, but that you completely have there's no guards. Nobody's guarding inside where these people are sleeping. You can walk around however you... Blood and Cheese were able to stroll right by the drunk king. And believe me, that's not a show oversight. That's the show showing you these guys at the moment are clueless and inept, and something needs to change. And he really probably could... the King's Guards are there, but no one says a word to them. No one bats an eye to them. They just walk past. It's oh, so if one of those guys has a bow and arrow and turns and headshots the king, that's it. That's it. No one's getting in front of the bow and arrow, So, pretty naive handling by Team Green, and that's what you get when you don't have everybody on the same page. And they got to clean their shit up in a hurry because obviously what happens. I'm trying to think of other pivotal Team Green moments in the episode. I guess the ones that would stand out would obviously be Larys doing his shit and making it pretty clear that he's hired all the new people, and then he interjects himself with the king, and is clearly trying for Otto's job, which I thought was pretty clear. And so you have division amongst Team Green and people, attacking themselves. And, it's not a great start for them.
Sorry,
So
I'm just going to interrupt
yep.
for 1 second. Jesse in the chat says that they're showing vulnerability by just sending ravens when war is literally being declared. I could not disagree with you more. I don't think it's vulnerability. I think it's cockiness. I think it's arrogance by sending ravens when this just happened. Like that that's just my opinion, but I think it's arrogance. I don't think it's vulnerability.
Well, and I also look at it from this perspective is they just usurped the throne, right? Like they put so much time and energy in overthrowing Rhaenyra and getting Aegon to the throne that they haven't had an opportunity to even create a counterpoint to anything. Like why there's no guards, right? They haven't actually fully grasped what they've done within King's Landing. You know, they weren't ready to lead King's Landing, let alone have, as you said, royalty murdered. You know, referencing one of my all-time favorite movies, Goodfellas, you know, they killed a made man, right? Like, you can't touch made men, and they did, accidental or not, that they were clearly not in a position to lead Westeros, let alone deal with a situation to now where things are escalating to a point of all-out war. They're just simply not prepared for it.
Sports term here. How many times have we heard, you can get to the top of the mountain, but it's much harder to stay at the top of the mountain. And here we are, maybe a couple weeks later at most. And they're not doing a very good job at staying at the top of the mountain. Here's a question for everybody, since it'll cover both of these scenes. Larry's Strong, however you want to pronounce it, Larry's. What do we think his end game agenda is? You could say, Allison's feet, but I think we all know that it's a little more than that. What's his end game? And would you say he's definitely in Aegon's ear now? Because I think he is. Although probably a little less so in Allison's ear, considering what happens at the end of the episode.
I absolutely think he's in Aegon's ear, and I do compare him so much to Littlefinger, right? And just how manipulative he is, and how he's pulling the strings, playing 3D chess, where he's trying to be 3 steps ahead. And so far, it seems like he is. He's clearly running a good game. It's his own game. What his end game is, I actually don't know. I can't imagine it's to be sitting on the throne. That's not who he is, but I certainly see him wanting to be the hand of the king. And I did highlight that moment, Sean, about how he pulled himself to the side, spoke to Aegon directly, saying, we should maybe consider a change of leadership where Otto might be too close. I absolutely see Larry's trying to wiggle his way into a position of controlling from behind the scenes.
I'm not sure if anybody noticed, but that was only after Allison turned him down. So he goes to Allison. Allison's just like, yeah, not interested, basically, without saying it. She's like, oh yeah, I was preoccupied. And then the next thing he does immediately is go to him.
Well, and I think what we're seeing here is, I think he realizes that not only is Aegon not fit to be king, but that now that he's in Aegon's ear, if something happens, Aemon's ear, if something happens to Aegon, then who's next in line? And if he's in Aemon's ear, since we all know what happens at the end of the episode, there's always that possibility of him trying to put Aemon on the throne and be his hand, which would give him someone who is definitely tactically sound and probably more fit to be king than Aegon himself. And that would definitely spell trouble for Westeros in general, just because Aemon definitely feels like on par as a threat as Daemon would be if he was on the throne.
They teased that towards, I think, the penultimate episode of season 1, when they're searching for Aegon, and Aemon's just like, I would make a better king, essentially. He's going off to Kristen Cole, and clearly those two have a thing. It's I I don't really know what his end game is. I wish I could sit here and say what his end game was. Littlefinger did want to be on the throne at some point. It makes it clearer. I agree that I don't necessarily think his is the end game, or the throne's the end game for him. But it's hard. Like, this is a guy that killed his dad and his brother, right? Like, I wish I could say I know. I don't, and he's definitely one of the more intriguing, mystery-filled things about this show. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Ryan?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I agree that from Team Green's perspective, he is probably the most intriguing character, the one that I'm most excited to see how his character arc plays out. I truly do think they can really take him in so many different directions, and he is cunning and cunning enough, evil enough to do basically anything he wants to get what he wants. So I'm curious. I'm very excited to see how that plays out over the coming episodes.
Brief thoughts on Otto here, guys. We talked about this last night over on our Fandom Empire channel, but Otto obviously helped stage the coup, wanted anything but Rhaenyra on the throne, was willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And it certainly seems that now that he's gotten what he wants, it's not going as planned. How do we see this going for Otto? Let's go around the round table and start with Randy.
Honestly, I think Otto realized he made a very large mistake here, just because he's having problems controlling Aegon. And that was like the whole thing of that was his whole spiel from before. It was he being the hand. He had more control than he should have. And now that he has someone who really doesn't care about the throne, just doesn't, and is fine with having power and doing whatever he wants. I mean, we saw with, when Aegon's taking petitions and Aegon's trying to do the right thing for the people, and Otto's like, no, you can't do that. And then there was a little bit of give and take. You had then Aegon treats the Smithies proper and says, yes, you will get paid handsomely, and gives a very logical reason as to why it has to happen, to the point of where Otto actually had to step back. I think Otto's now to the point where he realizes that there needs to be a change, but I don't think he understands what he needs to do to get there, to where he would still be in control in the end. And I think that's really all he cares about, is having that type of power, that type of control, and he sees it slipping away. And unfortunately, I can't wait to watch this dude get his comeuppance, because he definitely deserves whatever's going to happen to him.
I could not agree more. He deserves whatever happens to him. I dislike Otto so much. He is so sneaky. And I get that there's sneaky characters that we like, but not Otto. Like Sean brought up earlier. Or are we just supposed to forget that he literally beat his grandson last season, who he's now trying to be like, oh, listen to what I say and be calm with him and everything. But people don't forget that shit. You're not going to forget that the guy that's trying to tell you what to do just beat you, and now you have all the power. He's realizing that I don't have to listen to you. I'm the king, not you. Kindly get fucked. Well, unkindly, but
yeah, he honestly, I think he felt very lethargic this episode. He was just going through the motions of, as you said, it seemed like, for going back to season 1, 20 years, 30 years, however long it was, and this, he was scheming to put his family in power, whether that was through Alicent's becoming, queen, or now Aegon taking the throne. He's been scheming for all of this time to get to this point, and now he's achieved it. And as you said, Randy, he is now realizing Aegon really can't be controlled. But also, what I was saying earlier, Aegon is simply not fit to be king. He's not very smart. He doesn't really know how to. And just when they were trying to give away the sheep, when Aegon's like, yes, you can have your sheep back. And Otto's like, no, there's a reason we need 10% of the sheep. We got to feed the dragons for the war. And then the steal, right? He's like, yeah, you're going to get paid up front. And Otto's like, That's not what we should be doing. And it's clear that he's already getting worn out babysitting Aegon from the throne. And he probably is scheming already on how to fix that situation that at the moment, I don't think he has a solution for. And it's clearly he's not having a good time.
I don't think that he's necessarily unfit to be king, like you keep mentioning. I think that he just wasn't he just wasn't trained properly, right? Like he was never supposed to be king, so that's why he's not fit to be king. But like he is trying to do the right thing for the people by trying to give the sheep back, trying to help the smiths, like trying to be a good king. It's just that it's not the way that Otto does it, and Otto is so not compliant, so comfortable with the thing that has happened because he, what's his face, the king that just died.
Viserys.
Viserys. I'm terrible with names tonight, guys. With Viserys, he was so compliant because he wasn't actually paying attention. He was so drugged up from all the pain he was in.
At the end, yeah, they were making sure he wasn't paying attention, though. They wanted him out of the way so that they could start to make changes around the Red Keep and to Westeros as they seen fit. The thing that surprised me about Aegon wanting to help the people is that's not the guy we seen last season at the end of last season, who was, sorry for the lack of a better term, forcing himself on women even when they tell him no. And he's got a bunch of bastards around Westeros, and much like Robert Baratheon had in Game of Thrones. And yet I expected him to be a dick. I expected him to be like Joffrey. And he was actually the opposite of Joffrey, or attempting to be, on that throne. So I don't think it's as cut and dry as this guy's a big man child and isn't trying to do anything right. I think there's more to him than what we see. And I think the actor, I think it's Tom Glenn Carney or something like that, did a really good job in this episode playing Aegon, because we don't spend too much time with him in season 1 at all. And when we do, there's various other actors playing him. One of them was David Tennant's stepson. So, we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. We're going to save the last event to the end because it's kind of a Team Green, Team Black event. The Team Green MVP for this episode. Who is the most standout character for Team Green? Randy and Ryan, we're really looking for your responses, as Jade and I already gave our overall MVP last night. But we'll chime in after you guys briefly.
So that's one thing I struggled with, is I felt like not, even though there were, standout characters in general, no one really, took a gigantic leap forward for me. But ultimately, I ended up going with Alicent only because some of the way she acted with her eyes at times, like you could see the conflict. You could see, even though, yes, she's, essentially whoring it up a little bit in this episode, or more than a little bit. But there were times when you could tell she was truly conflicted, and that really kind of caught my eye, where you could just tell she was fighting with, her long, like I said before, like that childhood friendship she had versus trying to be faithful to her family and trying to figure out how to make everything work. And that, because she wants a peaceful end to all this, and it's admirable, but we all know that's not going to happen. And I feel like her performance in just trying to drive that point home, and like I said, just the emotional conflict she's going through, and just her overall performance, I thought, to me, that really kind of was what stuck out to me the most out of all the characters.
Yeah, I actually agree a whole lot with what you just said. With Alicent's, just the how torn she was, how sympathetic almost she was towards Rhaenyra, really did resonate with me. But I will say, and I spent the last several minutes kind of shitting on him a little bit, I actually really did like Aegon's performance in this episode. While I do think Aegon is not particularly fit to be king, You kind of touched on it, Sean. I actually did appreciate that he seemed to care about the common folk, and that he seemed to actually understand that you can't just keep sticking it to them. Like, you actually have to, if you want to win a war, you need all participants, and he did seem to recognize that. And while, JD, I think you would disagree with this, I actually did appreciate his interactions with his son. The fact that he seemed to actually recognize that himself as a child was kind of neglected by Viserys, that he wanted to not have to go down that same road with Jacaerys. Like, he really wanted to have that moment with him, even though it was not the right moment. At least, he had that interest and care to have him included in that. So I saw a lot more out of Aegon in this episode than we got to see in season 1. And I feel like I got to know his character more than any of the other characters throughout the arc of this episode. So my Team Green MVP would be Aegon Targaryen.
Jade, who was your Team Green? Well, I guess I can't remember the MVP for you last night.
I can't remember either. I think it might have been
I have it here.
But...
1 second. My MVP for the entire episode last night is from Team Green. Originally, through most of the episode, I was with Ryan, and it was Aegon. I thought the actor did a fantastic job playing the part, and I think that's half the battle, right? But I'm trying to find it here. Okay, well, apparently it's not there. Anyways, pick a Team Green MVP, Jade.
I'm gonna go with Allison for the same reason as Randy said. Although she's a raging bitch and I hate her.
She serves dessert well.
Yeah, fuck off. First of all, not when I'm on air. You don't say shit like that. I will put my foot down. Second of all, she is a horrible human being, but she did show some conflict, like Randy was saying. Like that one scene where she goes to the temple and she's like lighting the candles. You see her hesitation to light one for Lucerys. Pronounce his name right? I don't care. But like you see the hesitation to do it, and then she does it, and she really does want her friend back, but I think she's just gone down the hole way too far that she can't dig herself out of it. But I am looking forward to seeing if she still feels that way after the end of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, she did do that and then proceeded to go fuck Kristen after saying she wouldn't do that again. So I'm having I don't know. Alicent is something else. I think Jennifer brought it up in the chat. Eamon said it best in regards to Alicent. Yeah, he flat out says, she has feelings for the other side, and she does. Well, fucking Kristen Cole at the same time. So she's I don't know, I forget if it was Randy or Ryan that mentioned it earlier, but about how she'd been waiting, to act, or she couldn't do much with Viserys. And I'm sitting here kind of going, who the hell said she wasn't doing anything behind Viserys' back at this point? Ever since that night where Kristen Cole's going to murder himself there towards the middle of House of the Dragon season 1 before we get the big 10-year time jump, I wouldn't put anything past this character. And
you would not tell me they weren't hitting it the entire time.
I think it's a possibility, and I wouldn't trust her as far as I can throw one of the dragons, which is not very far, including the one that just had a wing left. Speaking of which, let's move on to Team Black for the episode. They don't have as much to do in this.
Just before you do, Jennifer says in it that Allison is self-righteous and kind of a victim due to her father, which I agree. Like, she was a victim because she got groomed and everything and told, like, go be with Viserys. But at the end of the day, like, she still made the choice to betray Rhaenyra. She still made the choice to backstab her time and time again, to the point of, like, you can only fuck up so many times.
Oh, she went and fucked up, and then she got fucked up. But anyways, look, sorry, I'm trying to bring my notes up. My phone's being stupid. So Team Black, we'll break it into two parts here. The first part of the episode, you know, you have Damon and Rhaenys. Damon wants Rhaenys to go with him, and they're going to attack King's Landing right away. Rhaenys basically puts Damon in his place, being like, "Hey, you're not the king." No, and I think Rhaenys is thinking things through like she should be. Actually, let me take a jump back even further than that. Winterfell. We go back to Winterfell, and Jace really gets a chance to stand on his own in this episode, and he's obviously going to be a much bigger part of this season and series moving forward. It was awesome to see Winterfell again. You know, it reminded us of just how honorable the Starks are, and some Stark lore that we didn't necessarily know to that extent. So that was a cool opening for that. So feel free to touch on that. We get Damon, who's just, you know, I get where Damon's coming from. Not only did he just lose a child, and remember, it's not just Lucerys that died. They just miscarried. And he just lost his brother. And say what you want, but if you don't think Damon loved his brother, you weren't paying attention to House of the Dragon season 1. So, and then he loses his stepson. And, you know, it's just loss after loss after loss. And for someone as short fused as him, you know, if you're a Dragon Ball fan, he kind of reminds me of Vegeta a little bit. He's just looking for someone to blame and to take his anger out on. And so we get a lot of that early on in the episode. And then we get Rhaenyra, who is obviously on her quest for some answers and needs some confirmation. It's one thing hearing your child died or was murdered. It's another thing when you actually visually see it. Also, a fun little fact that Zach got right on last night's episode. Rhaenyra, 4 words this entire episode. That's it. No other words spoken. I want Aemon Targaryen. And well, she gets another Targaryen, but we'll get to that. Just thoughts on the beginning of Team Black's episode. They're grieving, they're vengeful, some of them want revenge. And yet, unlike Team Green, everybody really does want to do the right thing for Rhaenyra, even Daemon, but have different ways of seeing it through. And we'll go around the round table. Randy, kick things off.
So yeah, to start the thing off with seeing Winterfell again, that was amazing. They seeing the wall intact and getting a little bit of Stark lore on top of it. Just the look on Jace's face when he gets to see out over the wall and trying to make the comment of, you know, he's just trying to keep out wildlings and stuff. And you know, Stark is like, no, we're protecting everybody from death. Obviously, that's foreshadowing, which is obviously cool, but it's just the idea that it just shows the importance of the Night's Watch and what they do and just how honorable that particular position really is and how important it really is. When we go back and Rhaenys lands, and like you could see the just Daemon, the way his body language, the look in his eyes, even though he looks kind of cool, calm, and collected, you could tell he's just seething, that he is ready to just absolutely unleash hell. And Rhaenys makes a very, you know, good, you know, argument in the sense of, you know, it took, it's like, I've lost a child. I had to, it wasn't until I saw the body that I accepted it. And obviously, as we, Damon still wants her to go. And it's like, she's like, you're not the king. She's the only one that seems to be really calm and understands just exactly how tense things are and where things are potentially going to pretty much head into. and it's, obviously she's the voice of reason, which is what everybody needs, especially during a time like this. Um, I give credit to Damon just for the fact that he still kind of just went, you know what, you're right. Decided to just not hop on that dragon, not decided not to go out and to do something completely stupid and potentially get himself killed in the process. But then when we get to Rhaenyra and seeing like her her quest for finding proof that her son is dead, it's interesting to just the different settings they use and the lighting and uh, that whole beach setting and her coming over that hill and just it was so beautiful. It was breathtaking. But we get to see her get that proof that she was looking for, and I mean, I felt for her, like that's how powerful, like the way, just the acting with the tears, and like you could just see the anguish, and that really kind of resonated with a sense of just like you couldn't do anything, but it didn't matter if you liked her, disliked her, hated her, you couldn't help but feel bad for her regardless. And it just speaks to how good of an actress she really is. But ultimately, like you said, those 4 words when she finally got back, she got what she needed. And yeah, the content, the seething anger, the lust for revenge in her eyes alone was palpable, and you could just feel, you just wanted to go to war with her, because that's how strong her convictions were. So just going from all that, and obviously we can, if you want, I can touch on the funeral as well, a little bit, since that was just a little bit after that. That definitely moved me. Like, I felt the sorrow that everybody felt in that, and that's how you can tell that you're attached to the characters, when you feel what they feel and exude some of the same emotions they do while watching this. That was so well done. The music, the acting by everybody on basically saying their goodbyes, it was very strong, and yeah, it was a great scene too.
I agree 100%. Just touching on the funeral part before I go over like everything. I saw a post today that was just like, "Oh, what did they name the youngest son? Joffrey? Is that right? Anyway, the
I
youngest
believe
son,
so.
what?
I believe so. There's 2 of them, Joffrey and Viserys.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
Joffrey
no,
threw
no, Aegon, Joffrey, and Viserys. I think there's 3 of them.
the youngest strong boy. He threw in Lucerys's toy horse that he was playing with in the first season, and that just like it broke me. And like when we were watching it, I even said to Sean, like at the beginning of the very episode, as soon as we saw the crow, I'm just like, oh, we're going, like it's back, we're back. This all the hype that I didn't have was immediately there because of seeing the crow and seeing them go over Winterfell, and then seeing like the wall and everything. It was just breathtaking. And they did a history of why the Night's Watch started and everything else without having it to be like shoving it down your throat. They were able to say like, this is why we're here. It's explaining to other character, not just the same stuff that we've been told for the last 8 seasons of Game of Thrones. And then to see Damon like step up and take control while Rhaenyra is on her quest, that that meant a lot to me, only because like, I mean, it's no secret Sean and I have had a miscarriage in the past, and when that happened I was a wreck. And Sean stepped up and he took over all the house duties, all the duties with Jensen. Like he was A plus. So seeing Damon be able to do that, and like even though he just lost a son, so did Sean way back when. So like to see the parallels on that, it was heartwarming at that point. I think that he does have to realize that he's not the king. He does not get to make decisions, but I mean, that all comes with time because, like, he was also told throughout the entire life that he was going to be, uh, that he was going to be a king, and then Rhaenyra happened, and guess what? Now you're not, right? So you're now not even a king, you're a king consort. Um, yeah, and then her finding Lucerys as a dragon. Oh, fuck. That was it was a hard watch. Like I was tearing up. It was bad. It was bad.
There's so much to dissect in this episode, and we got off to such a banging start, right, with us going back to Winterfell and seeing the wall and getting to kind of harken back or forward in some, to what we kind of grew accustomed to, and just getting to see Craig and Stark, right? We didn't get to see a single Stark in the season one. That right out of the gate was like, oh yeah. I mean, just the honor, the integrity of, hey, we say we're going to support you. This is what we can do. That meant a lot to me right out of the gate. But along with Kragan, I was so excited to see what Jace, we're going to call him Jace just because I can't say his full name. That character as well. I mean, I said the same thing about Aegon, how we saw Aegon's character kind of evolve this episode. We got to see a lot of him. Same thing with Jace. I feel like the character, how he handled negotiations with the Starks and how he was able to persuade them to provide a couple thousand men, then to get the Raven that says, oh, your brother just died, and then to see his embrace with Rhaenyra, right, when he got back, really touched me. That to me was the moment where I was first truly emotionally affected in the show, and just knowing that that the three of them, and now with Rhaenyra and Jace, that they are one. They're short a person, like they're wounded and they'll never get that back. That really meant something. But the whole Daemon perspective as well. He was always number two, right? Even when he was Viserys' brother, he was always kind of the second fiddle, and we kind of saw, I think, a little bit of him trying to assert some power, and Rhaenys was just like, no, you're not the king. And that moment where she's basically put her foot down, I think really helped Daemon re-find his position in the house in Team Black. And while he was angry and he was ready to go to war and he was ready to put his sword through anything in his path, he also knows when he needs to withdraw, and I think we saw that a little bit. But the moment Rhaenyra returned from her quest and she finally got, or I won't say got closure, that closure has, she's not there yet, but saw what she needed to see, in terms of accepting, that Luke was gone, and she said those 4 words, I want Aemon Targaryen. That unleashed Daemon to do what he needed to do. And that really just triggered every event after that. The torture / interview of Mysaria, right? The White Worm, getting the information he needed to get into King's Landing really set the tone for what was to happen next. So I really thought that Team Black was much more, they were galvanized, right? Where Team Green was separated. Rhaenyra and her entire group were galvanized together as one, and that really drove forward to where they were able to make the next strike, and to me that was really exciting television.
Something else that I haven't noticed a lot of people talking about is like the sea snakes reaction to Lucerys dying, right? Because like there was so much controversy over like his hair, his lineage and everything, and if he was going to be crowned his heir, and like if he was going to take over the fleet and everything, only for him to be like, yeah, no, he's my heir, no doubt about it, he's still my grandson. Only for this to happen, and then he gets the dagger at the mid part of the episode, and like to see his heartbreak over it too was just like, oh, like they did have a closer bond than people thought.
Yeah, they did a good job in season one, giving them a couple of moments, and I like the way that came off in this episode. It doesn't get attention because there's just so much that happens, but I thought it came off well. Ryan alluded to it. It's that time because we don't have much time left in the episode. So we get our blood and cheese moment from the Fire and Blood book. Some people who know the backstory knew this was coming. Some didn't. The question was going to be execution. How did they execute this? Jade's response to it as it was happening was, "What the fuck?" And I wish I'd been recording her. And like, again, I knew it was coming. I didn't know how extreme they would be with it, though. It definitely had the ability to be a moment that was even more jaw-dropping than the Red Wedding. But I think they went the more subtle route. Ryan's got some takes on that. It was a hard watch as a dad, watching Blood and Cheese make their way, on on Damon's command. He wanted Aemon's head on a platter for Rhaenyra. Instead they get little Jaehaerys's head on a platter, and like you see them go all through the inner parts of King's Landing and the Red Keep, and they find Helena. Harkens back to Helena's warning at the beginning of the episode. She's scared of the rats. Everybody thinks she's fucking crazy, and yet she's probably the smartest one in the show. She's got a little bit of Bran Stark in her. And I talked about this a lot last night, so I'm not going to say too much on it tonight other than heinous and really hard watch, even with them maybe going the more subtle route with it. We'll go around the table, but we're going to we'll start with Randy. Go ahead, man. Your thoughts on, I don't know any other way to put it, the execution, the beheading of a 4-year-old boy.
Well, let's get the good stuff out of the way first. Like you had alluded to it earlier, just going through the castle and the sewers and just like the attention to detail, that the lighting they used, it was all really cool. I really didn't know what was going to happen because I haven't read this. I haven't read the source material, so this was a very big surprise for me. I figured, honestly, I was waiting for one of them to turn on the other. I was waiting for Aemon to kill them both. I mean, like literally, there's just these little things I was kind of playing through my head watching this. And when it went down, I was like, "Oh, fuck! Okay, we're going there. Alrighty then." And the fact that even though you hear Helena, you see Helena leaving the room, you could still hear, like, the sound design. They did a great job of, you might not see it, but you're hearing it. And I've seen enough horror movies to be able to at least stomach those types of sounds. But it is definitely difficult to sit there and be like, I can't believe they just did what I thought they did. But there it is. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next episode because of it. It was definitely shocking. And even though, yes, the whole idea of son for a son, I don't really feel that this is going to go over well for them at all. I feel like they've pretty much just signed their own death warrants because, it's one thing to carry out the hit you're meant to carry out. It's another thing to take an innocent and throw it in there and try to make the excuse, well, son for a son. No, that's not going to work. Damon's probably going to gut them both because they didn't do what he paid them to do, regardless of if he got his son for a son. And yeah, this is going to basically, I don't know if it's going to, bring, the Targaryens and Hightowers together there, or if it's going to be add even more chaos to it, because Aegon's gonna essentially he's probably going to just lose his shit and have no and be absolutely have no control over his emotions. Whereas where we saw the complete opposite with Rhaenyra, where she actually kept everything as composed as she possibly could, given the circumstance. We're going to see a complete, total opposite reaction here probably next week. And yeah, as heinous as it is, this is definitely going to catapult things towards war. And it's a shame that it had to be a 4-year-old child that's essentially going to start this whole powder keg off. Like that, this is it. This is the beginning of the end, so to speak.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were going to do Ryan first or me. Okay, so I don't agree with you. I'm sorry. I think that they fucked around and they found out. Damon was the one that set a son for a son. It is, oh, I hate saying it because, like I said, we have a 4-year-old. So, like, knock on wood, if it happened, I would go after them in a fucking heartbeat. But, like, they fucked around and they found out, and it wasn't even just Lucerys getting killed. Yeah, that's it too. But you go all the way back to Aemon fucking egging them on in the tunnels when he loses his eye. They fucked around and they found out. How many times? Time and time again. At a certain point, when is enough enough? Like, you have to stand up for yourself. And as far as like Rhaenyra being like calm and collected during it, and like on your point, Randy, and then like you think that Aegon is going to like lose it. I think that she's more so in shell shock that like because she just lost her dad, she just lost her baby, and then she lost her son, all in a matter of a week. And so like there's just so much happening that she's probably in shell shock. I mean, well, for Aegon it will just be one child. But to go off of like what actually happened, I was screaming at the TV and I was like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? He clearly said that Abe had one eye and silver hair. Does that look like a one-eyed baby with silver fucking hair? And as soon as I saw Helene, I'm just like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. Like, it was so bad. I'm sorry for swearing constantly. This is how I express myself. But like I was not prepared for that, and it wasn't until that exact moment that it clicked. Oh shit, Jaehaerys is Aegon's son, so it is a son for a son. It's not like it didn't click in my brain that that was his son, because he had no relationship with him in the previous season. And even the first half of the episode, like, it seemed very forced, and like that he didn't have a relationship with him, and that he was then trying to, but it still didn't click. So I don't know, it was a hard watch for, but I am going to stop talking there because I know Ryan's take on it, and I'm not going to take away his thunder. But I will continue with saying, and then I don't know how Helena, how she managed to make the decision. Like, yeah, I'm going to tell them which one is my boy, and how she was able to like just take her kids and run, and then to be shell shocked to see her mom fucking Christian again. Like, that's its own thing. But like, I did like how they added the little slices to her throat, because like, how many times do you watch a TV show and it's not there? So it's the attention to detail again. But go ahead, Ryan. I agree with you.
Yeah, so you kind of just put it up on here with Jennifer's comment. The one thing, that while Damon was very clear, you're looking for a one-eyed person, silver hair, then, Cheese did ask the question, what if we can't find him, right? And then they kind of cut the scene before we saw Damon's answer. So that kind of left some interpretation to what their options were in terms of completing their assignment. So I am curious to see, obviously, what the reactions are going to be next week from both sides, from Daemon and Rhaenyra, as well as from Aegon and Alicent. But yeah, to the scene. I've said, I've done a few of these Legacy of Westeros shows over the summer before we got to this point, and I've worked with Sean and Zach, and I've said this numerous times that I don't read the books. I am watching this for the first time. This is my source material. I don't know what's coming. So, Zach and Sean both talked to me over the summer, and they're like, yeah, if you know what's coming, man, this is going to be, an absolute gruesome scene, like something, could potentially be the most gruesome thing we've ever seen, up there with the Red Wedding. Obviously, season 1 opened with a bang, right? Like, we saw some things that I don't think we were prepared to see, and they just jumped right into it. So I didn't know when to this scene was coming or what to expect with this scene. But in the back of my mind, I was prepared to this is going to be something that really shocks me, right? And we got to the moment, and I'm thinking, the name of this episode is A Son for a Son. We obviously know Aemond committed the crime of killing Lucerys, but Aemond, from my perspective, has a lot more story to tell. So I had a sneaking suspicion, a strong hunch, that Aemond would not be killed in yesterday's or last night's episode. Obviously, he wasn't. So in the back of my mind, I was like, how are they going to close this out? Where are we going with this? So once we got to the point where they worked their way through the castle and we get to Helena, and I didn't recognize her at first. It's like, is this Alicent? Who is this? Where are we at? And then it clicked. I was like, oh, okay. There are babies in this room. This was the build-up earlier in the episode from, Aegon and, and how they interacted with the kids earlier in the episode. This is now the closure. I put together where they were going. And listen, I'm not one that says I need to see a child be decapitated, and I definitely know Game of Thrones as a whole has always been a bit more protective of scenes when it comes to kids. So I'm not upset that we didn't see them murdering was it Jaehaerys, but I was left disappointed. I really was. Like, at the end of it, I was like, okay, I heard the noises, I heard the sawing, I knew what was happening, but it didn't resonate with me. It didn't feel powerful. It didn't send the message I wanted it to send. And we know Game of Thrones. What makes Game of Thrones? It's those moments, those scenes that decade later, we're still talking about the Red Wedding, right? It is iconic. Those moments are what really set this show apart from everything else. And by next week, hell, by Thursday, this scene's gone. Like, it's not going to resonate with me. Sure, they're going to touch on the outcome of it, right? We're going to see how this affects both sides of the war, but this scene is not memorable. It's past that. So I was left a little to be desired with how they concluded the episode. I definitely am excited to see Aegon's reaction. I think, he was ready to go to war and send Vhagar out into battle for a house that wasn't committing to his side. That's a pretty small thing, right? But now his son's been murdered. Hell, he's ready. He should send the whole army after him. So I'm curious. I am excited to see that reaction. And then the same thing. How is Daemon going to react to them missing their mark? Is he going to lose it? Is Rhaenyra going to lose it? My personal opinion is Rhaenyra is going to be batshit pissed that this occurred, and I'm curious to see how she plays out the outcome of the situation. So while I'm very excited about the story that's been opened up, the moment to me missed the mark.
I actually could not agree with you more, Ryan, on that. And I think that's just because, like, I'm sure other people have had this experience too, but I think that I have a unique perspective on it because when season 1 came out, I was heavily pregnant with our daughter. And so watching the first episode of season 1, like, that was I got warnings beforehand, like, hey, you might want to turn off the TV, right? And then to watch this one, I've said before, we have a 4-year-old, so no, I didn't know what was happening. Sean didn't warn me or anything. I'm completely spoil free for this entire series so far. Did not read the books, source materials the same, right? We're on the same page there. But to have a 4-year-old and see him, hear him being sliced open, it didn't resonate with me as much as seeing episode 1 of season 1. So I think that, like I said, I had the perspective of being pregnant at the same time as watching that, and now having a 4-year-old at the same time as a 4-year-old being murdered. So like it is a hard watch as a parent, but it wasn't as hard of a watch as season 1.
That is going to bring us to near close on this episode. Everybody quickly here, Team Black MVP. For me, it's Rhaenyra. Only 4 words and yet a world of emotion all through the episode. Jace is a close second. Randy?
Yeah, I definitely I'm going to agree with you that Rhaenyra was definitely the MVP, just because you got a lot of acting, a lot of emotion, just through just the looks in her eyes, and that takes a lot of skill. And I got to give her credit for just pretty much being able to convey all those emotions just with a look.
Oh, for sure. I can't remember what I said last night. I think that in terms of acting wise, Rhaenyra hit the mark tenfold. But in terms of moving the story forward, I think my character was Damon.
Yeah, I definitely can't disagree with Rhaenyra's, even with her 4 words, told a hell of a story. I'm going with another child. For me, Jacaerys, even though his role was rather limited, the season started with him at the wall, how he was able to exquisitely work his relationship with the Starks, and then just the raw emotion once he returned and got to see Rhaenyra, and that embrace, and even the funeral. To me, I learned so much more about that character, and the acting was spectacular. So while Rhaenyra clearly did a wonderful job, and she's the lead of the show, Jace really showed out for me.
That leads us to who won the episode. Not tactically, but overall, who had the better, more compelling episode between Black and Green. Mine and Jade's votes don't matter on this one. And we did only get 2 votes in for tonight's episode. So if it's a draw, then we'll have a deciding vote, but you won't hear it till next week. Just to let you know, Jade and I last night went with Team Green for having the more compelling, more interesting episode. Actually, so did Zach. It was a clean sweep across the board on the Fandom Empire version of this. So, Randy, to you first, then to Ryan. Who wins episode 1 for you?
See, I think because of my bias, I was actually going to go, and I still am, going to go with Team Black, just because, and my reasoning behind this is just the way everybody acted with the loss, like that fresh in their mind. Even though they didn't get as much, I felt like they didn't get as much screen time, but I felt like as far as the reaction to the loss, everything that went into it for all the characters, how you get to see them individually have to deal with the loss and of a character. It's so, to me, that really just spoke volumes with me. And obviously being like a big Damon mark, that always kind of plays a big role in it as well. But I just felt like with Team Green, it was just so chaotic and all over the place, where it was interesting to some degree. I just felt like with Team Black, it was just a little more streamlined, a little more emotional. And that's kind of what really is forcing my decision here, making it go forward. Yep.
For me, I am going with Team Green. I, at the end of the day, feel, and maybe this is because they got more screen time, that I just feel like the story was driven more. We got more information from Team Green. While a lot of that information to me was disjointed and a lot of disconnection between the big power players within Team Green, I think each individual, whether it was Aegon and understanding his role and how he has taken to the throne, or obviously Alicent's, and honestly her I would say her regrets and her her emotional reaction to the situation, and of course Aemond is just angry, right? He's really ready to rip somebody's head off at any moment's notice. So well, I think Team Black is definitely, as of this episode, the more organized, more well-led group. I do think Team Green overall had a growing experience that we'll see if they learn from it. We'll see if they can take some of this disjointedness and congeal, especially now that Jaehaerys is dead. I think this is really going to be a pivotal moment for Team Green to have that same moment the Team Black had in galvanizing the troops. And to me, I think they did a better job of touching on those topics. So Team Green this week.
Just going to check my messages quickly because it's possible that we might have gotten a message during it.
While you do that, I think that it's I'm just going to talk while you check your messages. I think that next week, and I don't know any spoilers or anything, that we're going to see the complete flip, like Ryan is saying. Like, I think that Team Green is going to be united and be like, how dare they? Meanwhile, Team Black is going to be like at odds with each other because Rhaenyra was very specific on who she wanted. And Daemon kind of took it upon himself. Sorry if you heard Tucker there. But Daemon kind of took it upon himself to be like, no, it's a son for a son, not necessarily Aemond. But
well, no, I don't have an answer. So you'll have to tune in to next week's episode 2 to find out which team won episode 1. For our Fandom Empire version of this, it was Team Green. Right now, it is very much up for debate who won this one. So apologies for that, but we will find out next week. If you haven't yet, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, set notifications to all so you can keep up to date with all of our content here on the channel. There's a lot of it. Really appreciate Randy and Ryan and Jade for coming out. You can check out Randy and I tomorrow night on the Legacy of Star Wars as we review episode 4 of The Acolyte. You can check Ryan and I out next week with another episode of Colic Nation, I believe. And Jade will be back for more House of the Dragon content next week. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. That is going to do it for us tonight. And just what a beginning to an 8-part season 2. Looking forward to see what comes next. But for Randy, Ryan, and Jade, I'm Sean. And we'll see you next week. Take us home, Tywin.
Do you know what legacy means?
It's what you pass down to your children and your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone.